everything?
Yeah.
I think he's got a couple.
But they're not sweet, they're not savory, and they were the big hit at Kiwanis, and they were the last minute throw together at about 11 o'clock last night. I'm like, well, what are we gonna do with this?
They're all really good, but
Well, I
out of the first year, the cranberry a lot. I think it's
I
probably just the first.
may have not printed the agendas.
Gotcha. No, that's
I
okay.
printed everything else.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get kicked off, just in the interest of respecting everybody's time. We don't have any action items today on the agenda other than the approval of the minutes, and since we don't have a quorum, I'm gonna hold off on minute approval, and so we will skip that item. So we're just gonna start with introductions and then go to our public comment. So I am Tyler Palmer. I'm with the City of Moscow, current PBAC chair. And we'll go around and do introductions, starting this way.
Good. Kara Haley, for City of Pullman, I guess, former PBAC chair.
I have here, we'll call it.
Mhm.
Past chair, thank you, past chair, I will work on that, and very much enjoying it.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry for
putting that on
everyone
the
there that was
record.
get attracted in person, but man.
I'm Eva McCall, City of Pullman.
Sandra Kelly, City of Moscow.
I'm Mike Pompel, I'm your executive director.
All right.
Jean Elliott, community member.
Robin Nimmer, Alta Science and Engineering.
David Hall, member of the SWAG, or whatever it is, that meets very rarely, it seems like.
Thanks, David. Let's see, and let's go online. Steve, you want to go first? Yep.
Oh, Steve, it's doing it again.
So that is for those who don't speak fluent Chipmunk, Steve Robichon, who is our technical advisor for the Pollution-Based Aquifer Committee. Let's see, Michelle.
Are we sure that we have sound working at all?
Nope.
Wonder if,
I don't hear her either.
there we go.
Yeah,
Sound works.
Michelle, you may be muted or something.
Or may not have a microphone selected.
We see you.
Tom, why don't you go ahead while we got you up?
Okay. My name's Tom Handy. I'm Whitman County Commissioner.
Thanks for being with us, Tom. Let's see, we've got Kristen.
Hi there, I'm Kristen with the City of Pullman.
All right, Sean?
Sean, you're muted. He just got on, so it might be.
Okay, we'll get Sean. That's I'll introduce on Sean's behalf. That's Sean Wells. Sean is the Public Works Director for the City of Pullman.
Mhm.
Michelle, did we get a microphone figured out? No, okay, that's Michelle, IDWR, appreciate you being here. Patrick.
Yep, Patrick Cabbage with the Washington State Department of Ecology.
Perfect, thank you. Did I get everybody?
Lauren?
Oh, Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I work at the Police Conservation District.
Perfect. Great to have you, Lauren. All right, I think that covers all of our introductions. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here. We will, as I mentioned, skip agenda item number 2. We might circle back if we end up with, well, where are we at on a quorum with online?
Our universities.
We're
and
missing
counties.
WSU,
Well, not all
U of
counties,
I.
Not all counties.
Yeah,
We have 8.
we have 8. Yeah, so we're short of 8.
I don't think you got Kyle.
Oh, yeah, Kyle, please do introduce yourself as well.
It's okay, Tyler. No big deal. So Kyle Duckett here with Alta Science Engineering.
Great, thanks, Kyle. All right, so let's see if we're
How do you put all of those on?
8 and 8, 16. So we are at 16 and we've got 8 members of the board here. Is that what you said, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, Mike, you can go to view.
I snuck in here as well, guys. I'll be on my way.
Oh,
Great, see you soon, and then go to gallery. There.
That's not all of them, but that's most of them.
Yeah, it's as many as it's gonna put on there. Okay, so if we're at 8, I'll wait till Sean gets here, so we'll continue if he's coming in person as well. Public comment for any items that are not on today's agenda. Okay, well, then we are going to continue on with unfinished business, of which we don't have any on the agenda for today. So moving on to agenda item number 5, which is new business. We have the PBAC participation in the Perce technical subcommittee. We were invited to present to the Perce subcommittee. They held a meeting. As you all know, the Perce has fairly broad claims in the basin through the Palouse Basin adjudication. They are in settlement talks. So that is in process, and they have formed a technical committee to inform those settlement talks. And so really what they want to have is all interested parties with a voice at the table, so as they are working to balance out the needs within the basin and the ultimate settlement on the tribal claims, that those needs are taken into account, which includes the needs of the water users in the Palouse Basin, and so everybody that is represented by PBAC. I gave a presentation of our alternate water supplies and gave some context for the volume of water that we're looking at, the diversion rates, and also for the kind of our timeline, the demand horizon that we looked at in that process. And they were appreciative of our participation and asked that we have a fixed representative on the technical advisory committee, so that as they work through the settlement of those claims, that person can help inform that process. And so we are going to be working on identifying who the right person is to have represent our interests on that. So we'll have some internal discussions, and then we'll inform back out to the committee as we identify the best candidate to have sit in on that for us. And it may be sort of a team effort, but we'll get that figured out and just make sure that we're represented when it comes to that pretty critical process for us. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that?
How often do they meet?
Monthly.
Yeah, that's good.
They're meeting monthly right now.
And where do they meet?
It's a virtual meeting.
Oh,
Yep. So they do a virtual meeting monthly. They have had some in-person meetings. The very first one they had was actually here at the U of I, and we had representation at that meeting as well, but they're virtual for their routine meetings. Any other questions?
It's a good thing to be involved with.
Yeah, it'll be good for us to get that wrangled. Subcommittee reports. Our first one that we wanted to talk about is we have an oops, I skipped 6 entirely. I'm just out to get you, Kyle. I am out to get you today, buddy. It's ignore Kyle day for me. Presentation discussion. We've got a presentation on the well monitoring and the Genesee well chips that we're going to have Kyle with Alta Science and Engineering. We've been looking forward to this despite me skipping it. So take it away, Kyle.
So, Mike, I'm trying to share my screen and it says host is disabled, participant screen sharing.
Your screen.
There you go. That should do it.
You should
Excellent.
be
Yeah, that was too easy. I was expecting some trials and tribulations there. Are you guys seeing my PowerPoint okay?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. See, that was just too easy. So I thanks, Mike, for getting me on the agenda, and no worries, Tyler, for trying to skip through my presentation and kind of put the meeting on a fast track. I see where you were headed with that. But I was hoping to make it down there today and see everybody in person. But this week things just didn't quite line up this week to make it down there. So as we'll talk about here in a few slides, I've got one more agenda item for the data loggers. So hopefully I'll be making it down there in the next few months and wrapping that up. And me and Mike are gonna kind of meet up and just do an inventory of all the PBAC gear and make sure, somebody with PBAC knows, what gear we've got, and we could figure out, where we want to warehouse the gear, and the Genesee well chips as well, what we want to do with those. So, but anyways, I'm thinking to just walk through data loggers real quick. That'll be a quicker one, and then walk through the Genesee well chips report, and kind of, give you the quick summary, and then we can talk about moving forward. So here we go. All right, so quick summary. Recall there's 34 sites that we monitor. We just had issues with 2 sites this year. One of them, we had already planned for a replacement, and I had a replacement in hand for it, kind of anticipating that it was on its way out. But another one, the one at Pullman Well 3, that was kind of unanticipated and unfortunate, really. That logger is just a year or 2 old and really, had no business having any issues. So we sent that back to Solence and got that replaced under warranty. And so that's kind of my last agenda item for this year, is to get down there and replace that. But other than that, we had representative data from our other sites. I think there was one other WSU logger, WSU Dairy. The logger was showing some kind of oddities in the data. So I'm not sure if Steve was able to kind of finagle that and adjust it, or if he had to throw some of that data out. But other than that, things went really well this year, and we were able to tackle it in that kind of 1 week period instead of doing it over the course of months like we had in the past. I had in the past couple of years. So that ended up working out okay. Huge thank you to Moscow Pullman, folks at WSU for meeting me and making that work. Everyone was really willing to work with me. So you guys might remember last year I talked about the livestock and the horses joking around with us at the INEL wells on the UI campus. So they like to knock that well cap off and get in there and mess around with the data loggers. But so I finally put a lock on that one, and we'll have a key, and the folks at UI will have a key too. So so that's kind of it for the good. The one kind of misfortune of this download season was my attempt at getting a logger in the Viola City well, in one of the Viola City wells. So after kind of talking with Paul about the idea originally, I went back and forth and weighed the options on, waiting and giving PBAC a quote to get out there and install a monitoring tubing in that well to house the data logger, or whether or not to just kind of go for it and try to put a logger in there with no monitoring tubing. So kind of for context, we have several other wells that we monitor that are, private wells, very similar, that don't have monitoring tubing and, have been okay. And like, as I was installing it, I tried it with an old spare and, made sure I thought that it wasn't going to get hung up. But I ended up, coming back a few days later after I had installed it and finding that it was in fact, as I feared it might, and it's hung up in the tooling down the well. So the one bummer of this download season. So that Viola well would be our 35th well in our network, and is really kind of an interesting area. So I guess more to come with that, and kind of been weighing the options on what to do for that. But I think at this point, after talking to Steve and talking to different folks, I think the price and the hassle of going in there and trying to untangle it and get it out probably isn't going to be worth it, rather than waiting to a point where the pump needs to come up for another reason and getting it out at that time. Kind of a saving grace here. I have to throw this plug in. It's our one of our accountants that orders the data loggers for us, and she got us a killer deal on that data logger. It's like 50% off. So if there's any saving grace there, at least we got a heck of a deal and saved a couple $100 on that data logger. But the one bummer of this year. So kind of besides that, we made replacements as we had planned, kind of retired some old loggers, cleaning out our network of some of those old loggers that were hanging around. And as far as deliverables, I've got the data logger spreadsheet all updated, the download binder all updated, and really I'm just waiting. I wanted to see, any feedback from you folks today before I wrap up that report. I think, it's always a shame to wrap up a project before giving your client a chance to give you some feedback. So, after today, I'll wrap that up and we'll get that sent over to Mike, and that'll we'll finalize the deliverables for this year. So again, the one remaining thing is to get down there for Pullman Well 3 and kind of just keep considering options for that Viola well. But, I think at this point, waiting on that probably makes the most sense. So just a kind of a reminder on how many data loggers and who owns the data loggers for our network. So we've got 27 out there. Viola is 28, and then WDOE has 14 and that we download, and then IDWR has 5 that we download. So I think that's 46 total, Viola being 47. So a lot of data loggers that we're downloading, again at 34 individual sites with 4 barrel logger locations spread out kind of strategically. So I always show this, just a reminder, if we're looking at between 20 and 30 loggers out there that PBAC owns, we're looking at replacing 2 to 3 every year based on a 10-year replacement interval. So we're still right in that ballpark. One thing that hasn't happened yet, this is the first time I've been able to report this for you folks, is we don't have any data loggers that are due to be changed for next year. So we finally kind of caught up, and our scheduling based on age and battery life has kind of paid off, and now we're caught up to the point where we can kind of take a year off, and then we've got a couple more loggers to replace in 2025. So I just threw on there, huge thank you to WDOE and IDWR as always. There would be significantly more loggers for PBAC to purchase and install without their help. So appreciate you guys letting me, access your equipment and sharing the data. So, as new wells are installed, kind of keep considering that. So for Genesee, keep considering, do we need to get an accurate survey on that? Can we get that? Can we get that data logger info? Keep working with them on that. Work with folks as we get new wells installed in the area, and kind of keep working on our network in any ways that it makes sense. So as we, yeah.
There's a question. Oh,
yep.
You're ready for questions.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, I had a quick question, Kyle. So the city of Iola well, do you know if they have planned maintenance to pull their pump anytime in the future?
That's a good question, Patrick. I do not. So that would be a good next step. And then along with that, when that opportunity does come, deciding whether we want to go ahead and do monitoring tubing and try that again the right way. So yeah, that's a good recommendation, Patrick, and I should follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Kyle? Kyle, can you remind me where we're at as far as a contract for next year? I don't recall the terms of our current contract or when we typically get into submittal and approval for that.
Yeah, that's a good question, Tyler. So it's varied year to year. Particularly as we've had we've changed over and in PBAC staff, we've had like years where we're not getting a contract in place until the start of the summer. And then we've had other years where we get a contract together, quite a bit sooner in the year. So I guess the takeaway there, no rush on that, but we'll start working on that here over the next few months, or the next I guess 6 months or so, and make sure we have that in place before next summer. But
We'll target on our end the January meeting.
Okay.
Kyle, we'll try and have something ready so that so if you guys can work on getting numbers together before the end of the year, then we'll get ready so that soon after the first of the year, we get a contract in place. So it's something that we're not scrambling last minute on.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great.
Great. Any other questions for Kyle?
Comment maybe? Following up to Patrick's comment. Maybe just a note to regroup back. I think it would be helpful to find out maybe when Viola is gonna pull their pump, and then maybe knowing already as a group if we want to put a little bit of money towards getting something in there. I mean,
So
they
we can
might
move
say
more
it weighs out and that gives us plenty of time, or they might say it's coming up and just something to circle back on. And Kyle, you mentioned something about it being kind of an interesting well. I mean, I guess between you and Steve, I would trust your best judgment on how helpful this would be to add to the network, but I always say the more data, the better.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. So I think Paul is actually the one who brought it up originally, brought up the idea of outfitting a data logger in that well. But it's a really interesting area kind of on that conceptualized recharge boundary. And the wells there, or this one well in particular that we're looking to outfit, behaves very differently than, many of the other wells, that you might think would be similar, just looking at it. So it intersects this sand layer that produces really well. So really interesting spot out there. And like you said, the more data and the more understanding that we can provide, in our basin and around our basin. I think it definitely is beneficial, but worth conversation and worth revisiting as far as, with how it aligns with PBAC's goals and things moving forward. So
Kyle, just to verify, you will contact Viola to see if they have any planned maintenance.
Well, the guy to contact with Viola is Paul, so I can definitely do that.
Okay.
I suppose we can do that then.
I'll catch up with Paul. It's always good to catch up with Paul. So I'll pick his brain a little bit, and we'll come back to it. And I like your idea of getting on the contract early and getting that squared away early in the year. So that all sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Kyle, and welcome Commissioner Lamar. Appreciate you copping on, and also Sarah Dawson with the University of Idaho. Appreciate you joining us, Sarah. Okay.
Sorry about that. I just couldn't find the link I had was wrong, and I was in some other place. But I'm here now, so thank you.
I updated it a few days ago so that it was my link, and maybe you missed that. Sorry.
I'm here now, so thank you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. We're going to move on to the second portion of the presentation, which is on the Genesee well chip analysis. And so back to Kyle.
All right, so I'll just kind of dive in here. So this is, recall, this was a project that came about after the city of Genesee went about installing their new well, city well number 8, and we had drillers chips, a few hundred feet of drillers chips from their first attempt at drilling the well, and then a couple hundred feet of additional drillers chips from their second attempt at drilling the well. So it's kind of an unusual situation there, to where the chips are actually from 2 different wells, but they were right next to each other, or fairly close to each other as far as I understand it. So we were able to take these drillers chips, have them analyzed at the Peter Hooper lab, which I have to give, I'll throw in a few plugs today. This is another plug. It's pretty cool to have them in our backyard. They did an excellent job, gave us a killer rate, gave us the research rate, and did the machine learning model on the data for free as part of their deliverable. And with that, there was tons of back and forth between me and the lab manager, who, she's just a grad student. So she's probably just beyond busy, and she was, completely helpful and was able to answer a ton of my questions, and then recommended and kind of made the connection with an emeritus professor at WSU, John Wolf. So between Ashley Steiner, the lab manager, John Wolf, and John Bush, and then Steve's 2 cents, as always, a lot of good brains working on this. And I feel like we were able to do a pretty good job with the results of the XRF and the modeling. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit more here. But I guess long story short, I'm not going to make you guys look at a bunch of data today, but long story short is the machine learning model did a really good job at the formational level. So for example, Wanapum versus Grand Ron, it did a really good job at that level. When it came to breaking down individual flow members of the Grand Ron, so if you remember, like to John Bush's cross section, we have some of those different layers in the Grand Ron, and the problem is they're so similar. The major geochemistry is so similar that the WSU machine learning model wasn't able to predict results as well as we had hoped. So kind of on that note though, they're constantly working to improve that model and include minor chemistry as well as the major chemistry into that. As they are able to improve they're called the training data sets for the model. As they're able to improve those data sets, the model performance will improve. So I'll talk a little bit more about the machine learning model just really quick. So bear with me. Kind of how it works is it looks at the chemistry, and based on the chemistry, it's able to show you, which flow member it thinks corresponds to each sample we've submitted. The unfortunate thing about the model is it has no way of incorporating the depth of the samples that I'm submitting, or like the location of the samples I'm submitting. And it doesn't consider like the known stratigraphy of the CRBGs, if that makes sense. So it's just looking at the chemistry and trying to make a match based on the training data. But the problem is that the results it provided didn't make sense conceptually, right? They didn't match the known stratigraphy of the basin. So like an example, we had several layers that had repeated matches, but they weren't stratigraphically consistent. So like we had Sentinel Bluff showing up in 3 different places in the stratigraphy, which just, it isn't even possible. So kind of the unfortunate part with the machine learning model is it's still, obviously in the works and being improved upon. But one of the really cool things about it, and kind of the saving grace here, is it was still really helpful. So kind of how it works is it will show you matches, and if the match is over 50%, then it's a pretty good match with a flow member. But we had matches that were well under 50%, but were still like the second or third place matches that did align much more with the conceptual model. So kind of what I was able to do is go back and forth with Ashley and John Wolf and John Bush and with Steve's input, and looking at the conceptual model, looking at the data, and then looking at those machine learning results, and kind of come up with the likely stratigraphy, even though it wasn't quite to the resolution that admittedly that I had hoped going into it.
Kyle, can I ask you a clarifying question there?
Most certainly.
So if I'm hearing you right, what I'm understanding is then that the machine learning kind of acted as, while it didn't identify necessarily the exact strata that we were looking for with accuracy, when looking at the machine data and what was generated or filtered out, it helped us filter to what were a number of the likely ones that we were then able, through other data, to match up. And so it did maybe just some of the initial filtering of the mass data down to the likely candidates. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's close. So I think more so the conceptual model or the known stratigraphic order kind of allowed us to do that initial filtering and then look at the machine learning model through that lens. So
Gotcha.
kind of almost backwards, or like inverse of what you said. So, but pretty much, yeah. So it allowed us a different lens of looking at the machine learning data, and kind of allowed, it provided supporting evidence for what, for several options, right? So we were able to narrow down our options and then use that machine learning model to support individual options. So.
Gotcha. Yep, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. And so I talked about a fence diagram, and I kind of went back and forth on how best to draw this up, but I made this in GIS and in Illustrator, and actually used one of John and Pam's cross sections to kind of create that fence diagram. So I'll try to explain this, real quick, give you the kind of the summary here. So on the left is just an idealized strat column for the Genesee well. And then on the right is John's cross section through Pullman. So my map down there, showing the Palouse groundwater basin, that the north arrow is to the right. So that might be kind of confusing to look at Pullman and Moscow turned 90 degrees. But that's the only way it would fit in there. And kind of fit my layout. So, but the important part here, so we have a north-south cross section through Pullman that John put together for us. And then over in Genesee, we have kind of an idea of the strat column in that well, in that Genesee number 8 well. So through the machine learning data, we were able to further, it did a really good job on identifying the Wanapum. So that light blue area up on top of the strat column there, it did a really good job of identifying that. And then the orange as well. So that's the Wapshiller Ridge flow member of the Grand Ronde. So those were identified really well. So we have a better idea of where that Wanapum contact is to build off of some of John Bush's work in the early 2000s. And then that we were kind of able to confirm the presence of that Wapshiller Ridge member. So the kind of cool thing too to remember is that water bearing unit in Pullman is right in there near that Wapshiller Ridge, that kind of really conceptualizes that really good producing unit conceptualized by John Bush. So so we confirmed that kind of light blue and orange members there, and then getting down into the purple, that's where we really had to use the machine learning data and look at it through that lens and consider, what might be the likely members. So getting down into the purple, definitely less certain, but we have the China Creek and Downey Gulch members, which make sense stratigraphically. The XRF data seems to support that. And the machine learning results had them as, they weren't the highest match for those samples, but they were, in the running, right? Say second or third or highest match for those. So again, it's not quite to the clarity that we would have hoped, but it's better than we had, and it's a good start. So along with that, when I was down in Moscow to do the data loggers, I went over and just got a GPS reading for Moscow well 8, to put the depths into elevations. So now we have them, as elevations to compare between Genesee and the Palouse groundwater basin, and then sorry, where's that going with that? And then as far as the data logger in Genesee, so the next step with them would be to work with them and make sure that we can get that data. Of course, we could use, I got a GPS reading with a handheld GPS that has decent, decent resolution there, but getting a real surveyed elevation, if they don't already have one, might be a good idea depending. So, kind of continuing to work with them. As far as continuing this work, and, this would be a spot for potential feedback. There's kind of a few options. In speaking with both John and Steve, I think we all kind of came to the conclusion that it might be worth it to just kind of table this for now and kind of reevaluate it as the machine learning model gets better. And, as like say other wells are drilled around the basin, it might be interesting, or we might be interested in kind of doing similar exercises with those wells, or even comparing between Genesee and like say over in the Union Gap area, different places. So that'd be one option, would be to kind of table it and come back to it. John also mentioned, like if this was something we really wanted to pursue and really wanted to hammer down on, it might be worth reaching out to someone like Dean Garwood that has done this in the past down in Lewiston, and seeing if he can, pick out something in the major and minor chemistry that the machine learning model wasn't able to. But again, there, in speaking with John Bush and John Wolf, the flow members are just so similar, and there's some crossover that it makes it really tough to discern those flow members. So at this time, I wouldn't recommend submitting any additional samples. Our data came back really good in the sense that they do a criteria called the LOI, which is the essentially it's a good measurement of the amount of weathering of the sample. So it gives you an idea of how representative the sample was, and all of our readings came back really good. So the lab, would be inclined to say they were representative samples. We just didn't get good matches. So I don't think submitting more samples now is a good idea. Again, I think probably tabling it, or, if we wanted to really pursue it, it would be having somebody look at that minor chemistry and try to pick out those minute details to tell them apart. Yeah, so I think all in all, that kind of wraps up for Genesee. I'd be curious, any thoughts on that? If we wanted to keep hammering it, or table it for now and revisit as it, as we have other wells drilled, or as the machine learning model improves.
Any questions, comments for Kyle?
Kyle, will there be something I can attach to the minutes? Or something?
Like a formalized report of some sort?
Well, I mean, whether it's this presentation or something else.
Yeah, Mike, I could provide this presentation for you. There is some text in this presentation which will make it stand alone a little better. I could add some text too to try and help it stand alone, without me talking on it.
Not
so I get
spend a lot of time. I just want to provide some documentation to
something with it. Okay, yeah, I can definitely help you out with that, Mike. And again, following today, I'm going to wrap up this report. I just wanted to give you guys a chance to see it through your lens and provide me with any feedback on it. So,
or I could just make a note and send it out later when it's available.
Perfect, Kyle.
Yep.
I have a question. Might be a silly question. So it sounds like we were able to get some breakout at a higher level. Sounds like. Have you guys discussed amongst yourself, is what came back in the form that you do have, which maybe is not as detailed as you want, is it what you would have expected? Is it totally different? I mean, does it tell us anything? Telling? I don't know how it was poorly put.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, for
It
one,
matches up. I
we
mean,
have, we have some similar, right? We have that Wapshiller Ridge unit. And, you know, I think it highlights that, you know, the kind of hypothesis we were testing going into it, or you know, the idea we wanted to test going into it, it highlights that it, you know, is still alive. Really getting water data and comparing water levels, I think is going to be really cool. So one more reason to table it and, you know, get some of that data back from Genesee. You know, we look at it for a few years and, you know, maybe we can discern through that whether it's worthwhile to spend more money on it. And again, you know, having the folks at WSU right in our backyard, I would bet that they'd be willing to run that machine learning model for us again, you know, on the same data. So they wouldn't be reanalyzing rock chips. It would just be plugging our data into their model. So I think, you know, kind of revisiting that in the future would be kind of low hanging fruit, and, you know, might be a free or very cheap way to improve upon this. So.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Do we have the chips back, or we will have the chips back?
He has the chips, and there's a question of ownership of the chips, which is,
Do we want to turn it up?
I don't know if we've settled on that,
Oh, because they're the Genesee chips, we're giving it back to them.
potentially. I don't know who owns them, and I don't know if, Kyle, have you settled on that?
So recall we got them from Mountain Waterworks, or I hope I'm not I hope I'm not butchering their name. We got it from the well drilling company or the water purveyance company. So I don't know that the city has interest in them. I don't know that they'd want them back. So I could reach out to Ryan and see if he's expecting those back. So I'll put that on my to-do list to follow up with Paul, and I'll follow up with Ryan. But I'm suspecting, Mike, that they're not going to want them back. So, you know, it might be, you know, if we've got a place to hang on to them in the meantime.
I'll hang on to them if they don't want them, for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. That's really interesting stuff. We'll task our technical subcommittee with taking a look and coming forth with any recommendations as far as further actions to be taken with this. But for now, we really appreciate it, and thanks for your work on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great.
Tyler, I think we have a quorum since Tom has joined.
Let's see, we are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 4. We're at half. I think we need one more in order to hit quorum of the voting.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. It's minutes. It can wait. We'll let her ride. Okay, any last minute questions for Kyle before we move on to our next agenda item?
I do have a question. I'm not sure if it's a question for Kyle or Mike or Steve. Getting the data logger in the Genesee well, and maybe I just forgot it. Did that happen? Didn't we agreed to give them some money?
We did, we agreed to buy it or contribute.
I don't know if we ever got a bill for it or what happened. Do we know?
I don't know.
Okay, can we follow up on that maybe? I might have some emails, or Steve
Yeah.
might know, or I just honestly don't remember where that was left.
Yeah, I don't remember where that landed. It was discussed, and I thought that we had approved funding for it.
That's my recollection. We'll need to check the minutes. It should be in the minutes.
Yeah, so one
We'll check
thing
on
might
that.
be to check back on if we paid anything for it. It could have been in the transition between Celine and Mike, but yeah, I just.
Wait, wasn't there something with like they had to buy something special? It wasn't just like, let's use a data logger, it's they had some special piece of equipment that their driller was recommending.
I don't remember. My understanding was we agreed to pay some money because they needed to do probably like I don't know if it was a change order or something with the driller to add that in at the
Yeah, I
last
think you're right.
minute.
Looks like
That special.
Steve might have some input on this. Steve?
Yeah, if we can hear him.
Is my mic working now?
Yep, we got you.
Yeah.
they have the hardware in Genesee, and they needed to program what's called a PLC, a logic controller, to collect the data at the increments that we wanted to collect it, because all they were going to do is show out real-time levels up on the ground surface. So they needed to get the programmer from Spokane to come down and program the logic controller to collect the data, and then show the operator down there how to download the data and send it off. And the cost quote, I guess it wasn't an estimate, I guess it was a quote from the Spokane people, was it was going to cost $4,000 to come down and program the controller and show them how to get the data off. And PBAC agreed to pay the $4,000 as a pass-through Genesee to the contractor from Spokane. And that's the last I heard of it. So I don't know if it's been programmed or if it's going to be programmed, or whether they just went ahead and absorbed the cost or anything like that. So somebody probably needs to get a hold of the Genesee operator and see what happened with that.
Okay.
New Steve.
Steve, can you, do I do that? Would you like introduce me or something, or how does that work?
I think Celine probably has more of the contact information. I was kind of just on the periphery of that communication.
Mike, if you can't hunt that down, I can help you get it.
I might have an email or two.
I'll ask
Maybe.
Celine.
Okay.
If you get stuck, let me know and I
Yeah.
can dig through my emails and see if I was somehow CC'd on something.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
follow up with Genesee and see where that landed.
It'd be great to make sure that we're
Yeah, it's a good
gonna
call.
have
Yeah.
access to that data.
Get the stuff that if we paid for it, we.
Well, as far as I know, I don't think we paid.
I
for it,
don't
But
think
I'd
we
like
had a
to pay
check,
for it
but
and
yeah.
I'd like to get that
It'd be nice
data.
to-
I've not seen any invoice.
Okay.
If it didn't happen, that would be nice to make
Yeah,
happen.
to Kyle's point too, now getting the water surface
Yeah,
and everything.
totally.
That.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry.
Kyle, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our subcommittee reports. You may have seen earlier today, Mike sent out an MOA that we had generated by Moscow's legal department. You'll recall that we were looking at our interagency agreement. The interagency agreement has actually expired. And so it's something that WSU can't legally make their contribution until they've got an active agreement. As we looked at this and in discussions with my legal department, this seemed like the best way for us not to have to really try and rush an MOA, which is going to be a hard thing to rush because it is an interstate agreement. And so it's going to require AG approval. So it seemed like a better way to go about this was to get an MOA in place to which all parties agree to continue under the provisions of the previous agreement for 1 year while we work out any edits, updates, and then get in place the new agreement. And so it seemed a good way to bridge a gap so that we're not rushing the edits that we've long wanted to see happen to the interagency agreement. And we all know that that will take some time as we work our way through each respective entity's legal department. So what I'm proposing is that we push through the adoption of that MOA. I made some assumptions about who would sign based on who signed the agreement. And so that's what I've included on the signature line for each entity. If you guys could please just review that. We'd like to get that moving sooner than later so that we can get that approved and through. So as soon as you can, if each of you can just email me back with a thumbs up, thumbs down, if you can run it through your legal folks, your administrations, and if it's something everybody's comfortable with, then that is a final draft of the MOA. If they have any edits, happy to look at that and have my legal team update that. So first off, just are they comfortable with the concept? Secondly, do they have any edits? And then once we get that thumbs up back from everybody, we'll get signatures and move the thing forward.
My only question on that. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Sandra.
My only question on that is, it seems like, well, I agree, we have to have a motion on that, and we don't have a quorum to make a motion on that. And I don't know that going through a thumbs up on email, that's not the motion, that's just saying we agree on things. So how do we need to just have a call in really quick? Or what do you want to do?
I see what you're saying, Sandra. I think that probably, I mean, at this point, we want to know if any of the entities, this is going to be a fatal flaw, we just need to know. And so as far as the thumbs up, it's not an approval of the MOA per se. It is a approval of the concept of using an MOA to bridge this gap for a year. And so if everyone over the next little bit can just do that piece, then I think then we'll be in good shape to finalize the thing, get a vote on it and move forward.
Yeah, and probably, if you don't mind if I
Mhm.
chime in, I think it would, I mean, like the way I would envision it for Pullman is, talk to our city administrator, make sure he's on board, our attorney, make sure that there's nothing crazy in here, that says like, no, we're not even gonna, be able to sign that, in which case, why would we all go through
Right.
the additional effort? Maybe at the next meeting, we come back with a finalized version for action, and then
Yes.
the agencies need to go to their own respective locations and get
Mhm.
approvals that way for signatures.
That's exactly
Is
it.
that how
That's
it
the
works?
hope, is any edits, so thumbs up on concept, any edits back. With the idea being that we have a final draft ready for approval at the next meeting.
Mhm.
So we've got signatures so that by early. What would that make us? Late November, potentially, we've got an agreement in place. Tom, you had something you wanted to chime in on?
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I can absolutely get this over to our legal counsel to have them review it on the concept and language of this temporary MOA.
Perfect.
That makes sense. I don't have Appendix A, and I'm sure he's going to ask what that is because, but I don't.
I'll send it, Tom. Appendix A was the original agreement.
Okay, that would be great if we could just.
Mike, we'll have Mike send that out. Can you send that out to everybody?
Thank you. And then once I have that, then I can get it to Bill and he can review it. So, and then I think it'll be a pretty quick turnaround for us.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
Steve,
And maybe we
still
could, if we, my suggestion is we just do the turnaround via email if possible. Maybe we can get it done before the November meeting even.
Draft edits. Yeah, I would hope to have all the draft edits done. I think that in order, and we could even, I suppose we could get signatures from the entities. We're gonna need PBAC as a body to approve the MOA. So we'll need a PBAC approval of the MOA. Before it goes to the agencies.
Yeah.
I would think before it
I
goes to the
envision,
agencies.
like,
Yeah.
in our write-up, it would say
Mhm.
PBAC approve
Okay.
this
Yeah.
draft.
Yeah.
Now going
Now
out to
going out to the
grader.
agencies. Yeah, I
But,
think.
I mean, the sooner we can do it, the better.
Yeah. And if it comes down to it and there is some pressing item that what makes us want to do it before the next meeting, we could call a special meeting if need be, to tackle that. Steve, was your hand still up from your previous question, or do you have something else you'd like to add?
This is just a new comment. I'm looking at the bylaws. And the bylaws say a quorum necessary to elect officers or transact business, except blah, blah, blah. It's constituted when a majority of all parties with at least one voting member is represented by at least one member at the meeting. So that would mean you have to have 4 entities with at least one voting member present.
So we've got that today.
And I think you have that.
Yeah, you're right. We are there today. So I guess if that's the case, then if we're just we are just looking for, is there a value in approving this with a quorum that we have here today? Because then if we do happen to hear back that there are edits or that it doesn't work, we need to be coming back at the next meeting anyway. But if not, if everybody's okay with it, then we would just be on the signatures.
Yeah, a contingent on, like no significant edits or no changes.
Yeah.
Nothing major.
Edits,
No
yeah.
material, that's a good way
Yeah.
to put it. I do have a question before we get into that, maybe. And I only say this because we've had other MOAs go out on certain things where we were working through agreements and then we had to do the MOA again for another year. And I'm sure there's like a sweet spot of term in terms of, obviously we don't want to draw this out significantly long. I guess my real question, I'll just get to it, is having this MOA through August 21st of 2024. Are we confident on that date? Does it make sense to make it, a year and a half? I'm sure this was what your legal's advice was.
Mike and I had a conversation about that earlier today, and that, our legal team, just based on the comfort level of extension with an MOA versus a renewal of contract, felt like a year is, you're starting to get, because that's a year from when the contract actually expired.
Right.
And so they felt more comfortable with a 1-year term so that it doesn't appear that we're just trying to continue something with MOA versus getting a new agreement in place.
I just wanna make sure we can get the interagency agreement
We'll have
updated
to
in that
focus on it and get it
time.
done.
Keeping in mind the same timeline that we talked about and the review time, and unlike this, that will probably be scrutinized a little bit closer.
Well, I think what that's gonna mean is that we're just gonna have to back build a schedule for those contractual updates and have that subcommittee really work on it, because we would need to, I think we'd probably have to set a goal of something like for an August final approval, we'd need to set a goal for draft submittal to the entities of spring sometime, you know, maybe April, so that we can get that out to the entities, give the entities respective legal departments time to look it over, get through a council process. And so we need basically, I think, you know, month for legal review, month for council process. So we're back from August to July to June at that point. And so then having that draft out in April so that we can have internal discussions. If there are any edits, we can have that submitted by May and have a little bit of a buffer. So
Sounds like we can do it.
I think we
guess
can do
I'm
it.
just
Yeah.
Reminding this, I think, is relatively present.
I'm gonna try to make it earlier than April.
okay, perfect. Tom, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I think this will be good.
I'm talking about Tom Handy. Sorry, Tom.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the same, that I think that Whitman County is fine with it as is, and so we'll be able to push this little piece through pretty quick.
Well, if this is the case, and I know City of Moscow drafted it, it sounded like we have confirmation from Layton Whitman that there's a pretty high level of confidence. I'd entertain a motion.
I move that PBAC, I'm gonna totally butcher this.
It's all right, you're good. We all will, it's okay.
That we move forward with this memorandum of agreement, or we approve this memorandum of agreement, contingent on the different agencies having an opportunity to send it to their legal and confirm that there are no material changes.
Second.
Okay, well, I have
You got it.
a motion by Kara, a second by Sandra. Any discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you all, and
Yeah.
please do keep it moving through your respective organizations.
And Tyler, once I get the attachment A from Michael, then I will get it right over to Bill Thompson.
Perfect, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, and I'll do the same.
Thank you, Tom, appreciate it. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's work on that. I think that will give us the time, and then, yeah, as our subcommittee, our interagency agreement subcommittee will backbuild that calendar. And as Michael said, we've already got some pretty significant progress on it. I'm confident that we can meet in April submittal to the full committee with the idea of getting that out to the respective entities by May. All right, moving on then, we're gonna go to our budget report, Mike.
So Rusty thought he was gonna be able to make it, but he didn't. He's not feeling well, so send us your best wishes. Budget committee met last Monday, 11th, I think. Well, it was the 11th, whatever day of the week that was. We're doing fine fiscally. The contributions have been received from University of Idaho, who is caught up from back years 100%.
Bravo, UI.
Whitman County is in process. They sent us a check. There was a technical thing on it. They're sending us another check. City of Moscow, City of Pullman. So we have a couple of checks outstanding, and I'll do reminders on those. The big news is the IDWR funding has been committed, $182,500 to narrow down our alternatives and do further work on those. We're working that through the UI process to make sure that we get to use all of it. So that's happening. We don't have it in hand, but we have a firm commitment on that. And I think that Tyler had a big hand in getting that funding. We will be seeking matches from other agencies for that.
Yeah, we're excited to have Brian Patton, the executive director of Idaho Water Resources, Idaho Division of Water Resources, Idaho Water Resources Board is going to be at the Water Summit next week. And so we'll be having some conversations with him about that. And we look forward to continued conversations with DOE as well. But it's exciting. We're moving forward. Communications, we don't have an update. We haven't been able to get a meeting together, but we hope to soon, and we will.
They're planning a November.
Yeah,
meeting.
we got a November meeting scheduled. Technical subcommittee. Let's see who is providing our technical update.
I'm hoping Kara can speak to that a little bit.
I'll try.
And they just met,
Last week?
Monday.
yeah, earlier
I
this
think it
week.
might have been Monday. I think you have on the 16th. It was Monday. The week goes by fast. Yes, so we met and we discussed things for quite a while. Kind of coming out of our workshop, it's kind of our understanding that we were being, semi-tasked or asked to kind of, there was the Alta Next Steps memo that they put together, specific to Alternative 5, kind of coming out of the workshop. There was discussions about how much of that do we think is valuable right now based on additional information that has come to light over the last year. And, are there things on that still make sense? Do we want to think about looking at Alternative 5 closer or another alternative closer? So obviously, we kind of started out some with the discussion about the IDWR funding. Mike had pointed out that we're still trying to figure out what some of the terms of that funding are, which makes the task of having the subcommittee dial down real deep a little bit difficult. Just as an example, are there limitations on, we talked about a flow or turbidity gauge on the South Fork, because that was one of the recommendations, again, out of a memo that was specific to Alternative 5. If we're moving Alternative 5, you would want more data on the South Fork. And we pointed out, or Steve pointed out, sometimes there's restrictions with taking funding and putting equipment in Washington that's being funded by Idaho. So just some of those nuances. I don't believe that we have the agreement fully figured out, or there's some terms and things of it that we still need to work through. So that became a little bit of a roadblock to the process. Not super significantly, but it was certainly something to think about. Steve presented some really brief but valuable information that he had put together on Paradise Creek turbidity data and flow data. So one of the things that Alta's memo pointed out was, if you were moving forward with Alternative 5, you would definitely need refinement for water quality in the rivers, Paradise Creek and Palouse Fork, as well as, flows, which was why the gauge was put there. But there is still some basic generic information available to us. And so he ran a really interesting Excel sheet, and I don't know if he's still willing. It might be interesting to bring back to the later, to the whole committee at a later date. But it kind of showed some challenges with, as we've been talking about, Alternative 5 may not be quite as appealing as we thought it was a year ago. And he put a little bit of numbers to that and presented that in the discussion, which was super, super helpful. So we spent some time on that. Steve could probably summarize it way better than I can. So I'll provide an opportunity for him to do that, or maybe it's something we come back and have a greater discussion or some reporting. So that was kind of where we headed in that direction in terms of like a flow meter. I think we kind of came to terms between potentially having an Avista study on Alternative 1 and not knowing much information about that yet at this point either, that it's difficult for us to dial down and give a direct recommendation. So we have a meeting set a month from now, but we feel like between the agreement terms, the Alternative 1 study and where that's at and what the commitment is, that it's a little difficult for us to dial down and give specifics until we know a little bit more about what boundaries we have on that. I do think, and Steve could probably relay, and I think we'll talk about it more at our next subcommittee meeting. We talked a little bit about trying to find a way to formalize a little bit more in writing or a presentation, something about how Alternative 5 has changed. I don't think, like I said, that we think it's probably super wise at this venture to necessarily install a flow meter. but I think we could present some of these numbers and maybe compare back. So kind of do an abbreviated version of what Alta recommended for alternative 5. Assuming we might switch gears to looking at something different. Does that make
Perfect.
sense?
Yeah, it does. Steve, is there anything you want to add to that technical report?
I guess I'll try to quickly add some stuff. There's 3 main unknowns that you have to consider, and one of them is how much water are we going to be required to leave in the stream?
Mhm.
And another one is how muddy can the water be and have us still be able to treat it without excessive technology and real estate? And the third one is how efficient is the treatment process? And depending upon what values you assume for those 3 unknowns, the unit cost or the cost per gallon to treat the Paradise Creek water ends up being more expensive than all the other alternatives. So instead of it being the least expensive alternative, it potentially could become the most expensive alternative. But until we can narrow down those unknowns and get some better idea about how much we have to leave in the stream, how muddy it can be and we can still treat it, and how efficient that treatment process would be, we really won't know for sure until we get to that point.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's, and my take, Steve, was, we can make some assumptions. There are a wide range of assumptions. I got the impression that even in the best case scenario, we're probably not meeting 50-year target demands. We might be in good shape for a while, but maybe not the long term. And then, of course, if you played on the less conservative side, it was not as great even from the get-go, potentially. So I think there's still a wide range, but it certainly wasn't as promising as I would have liked if, yeah.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Kara. Any questions, comments for the technical committee?
We will be meeting again in a month, and I'm sure we'll have lots to discuss.
So where is the Vista in their process?
We, Paul has a presentation scheduled for later this month with the Vista leadership, where they'll be talking about pump storage and specifically the opportunity for interplay with our alternative 1.
Okay.
So later this month, that proposal goes forward to Vista leadership. Any other questions for the technical subcommittees? Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Kara and Steve. Really appreciate it. Other reports and announcements, as you all know and are all very excited, next week is the Palouse Basin Water Summit. That is at Schweitzer Engineering Events Center, as it has been for many years. It starts at 4:30 p.m. All are invited, open to everybody, snacks, refreshments, etc.
Just a clarification, I've noticed this at at the Water Summit. Is the doors open at 4:30 and then the speaking program begins at
4 maybe?
Do they open at 4? I
It's
think.
kind of like
Doors
an
open
open.
at 4:30.
Yeah,
Doors
doors at
open at
4:30.
Presentations start
5-ish.
later than 4:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get in, get some food, get a drink, and then they'll start talking.
Could we maybe nail that down a little bit, because people are planning their schedules around it, because I know we've had some conflicts with various people from Pullman that didn't get off work or wanted to get off work or something. So if we could get a little more clarity on that, that would be really cool.
I don't know
Hey,
how
Eileen,
accurate this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it absolutely is that the doors open at 4:30 and the program is scheduled to begin at 5. And I know there are some years where that 5 p.m. has flexed just a little, but I anticipate with this year's program that we'll be starting promptly at 5.
Excellent, that's
Kristen,
great.
thank you very
If
much.
we can put that out with the media, that would be great.
Thanks.
I know, I realize that's Paul's, but
I just looked at a Facebook thing from the Water Summit, and it does say that. It says doors open at 4:30, program begins at 5. I don't
Okay.
know that the flyer, the poster says it, but
The
City of
poster doesn't
Pullman.
say that. She's right.
But
Yeah.
just so when people ask, we can tell them if nothing else, yes.
Try to be there by 5.
Yeah. There's also a forum for city council race that's happening in Moscow, like at 7 that night. And I'm not really sure why the organizers of that did it on top of the water summit. But anyway, that's a bit of a problem too with the schedule.
Is that the league's?
No,
Forum?
it's the Republicans.
It's the Republicans.
They
Okay.
threw it together late.
The wires got crossed, but I know they pushed it off to 7 to accommodate part of the water forum.
Cause
And-
water council. that
And I
way.
would say, even if you can only
Yeah,
come to part of
that's
it, come to part of it.
Yeah.
You don't have to, I mean, it's nice to be there for the whole thing.
Yeah,
but
it's a long
You
thing.
still
and-
get value out of
Yeah.
going for the first half or the second half.
Perfect. So yeah, we hope to see as many of you there as can be. It's an important and good opportunity for that conversation. And so yeah, excited to have that. And there's some exciting things happening. We've got a great keynote. Like I said, we've got representation from the tribe that's going to be there and participate. We've got Brian Patton from the Ohio Division of Water Resources is going to be there. It's gonna be a good year. So please plan on being there. Our next item is the AmeriCorps with Latah County Water Conservation. Mike?
So we're working with PCEI to secure an AmeriCorps volunteer or AmeriCorps member, I guess, to launch and conduct a water conservation program in Latah County using the ARPA funding that we've received. So that's on track for launch this winter, and we have funding to continue that for a while. So just on their calendar, it'll initially be 8-month,
Perfect.
but that's just the calendar. We're planning to continue beyond that.
I'm excited to see that move
Yeah.
forward. That's great.
Yep.
Good. And thanks to PCI for helping facilitate that. All right, excellent. Any questions for Mike on that? All righty. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 16th. And maybe we'll have an MOA ready to sign or get out there. So
We need to.
with that, I'll just open up any last parting shots before we close this thing down. Oh, that's true.
look at
Yeah,
that.
let's go back to number 2. Now that we can do it, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes from last month.
Second.
Can we approve the minutes from June since?
Sure, and also in June.
Yeah, that's the one.
Second.
All right,
Second again.
okay. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes stand approved. Thank you. Anything else? All right, with that, we are gonna stand
Thanks for the
adjourned.
treats.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, my pleasure.
I think I ate all of them.
No, you didn't.
I had like 10 pieces. I do think I liked the everything.
Like I said, that was the last thing to throw together. I just had a little bit of